getting started here. Just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone and good morning to those of you on the West Coast, and welcome to today's webinar on aligning culture with strategy, how to optimize culture for your team or organization to achieve strategic business objectives. My name is Charles Summers. It is my pleasure to be serving as your moderator today. We've got a 45-minute presentation before a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions at any time during today's presentation, please use the GoToWebinar questions queue and we will answer them during that Q&A session. If you'd like to reach out to me about any Humantelligence, webinar questions, or future webinar topics, feel free to reach out to me directly at charles.summers@humantelligence.com. Or you can also feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn as well. Many of you on today's call have already taken us up on some of our free tools. In fact, the majority of you have, but if you haven't, no worries. Here's a couple of things that you can try out. First, from our homepage, you can take our self-assessment or invite a team to take it and get your results instantly. Also, we have a great new plugin available on Google Chrome, Gmail, Google Calendar, LinkedIn, Slack, and Outlook that will help you better communicate and collaborate with your colleagues based on their underlying culture. If you're interested in a tour of Humantelligence, head on over to humantelligence.com/request-a-demo. Once I hand things off to Juan here, I will put a link to all of these items in the chat, and I'll also send them out after the webinar with the recording and slide deck. This time, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, CEO Juan Betancourt. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to Juan. So Juan, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time today to learn more about culture and how you align culture to strategy. I will be presenting the slides and Charles will be moving them from one to the next. So today's agenda, we are going to cover starting at what does it look like to successfully align culture and strategy? What's the roadmap to do it? What are some key actionable steps in doing it? So you can walk away with real specifics, and then we'll finish with the Q&A. The goal at the end of the day is to provide you a practical roadmap to align your culture with your strategy. And this is either for a team, let's say 5 or 10 people, your whole division, let's say all of sales or all of product management, or a manufacturing shop or retail operation, all the way up to your company. Next.
Okay, so we thought we'd kick things off here with a couple of poll questions, which I'll launch here in just a moment. And the first one here is going to be in relation to your team. The second one's going to be about your organization as a whole. So keep that in mind as I launch these polls here. Okay, give me one moment. Okay, so the poll is distributing right now. It should pop up here in any moment. We'll spend about 30 seconds here. The first question is your team's culture aligned with your strategy? And it's okay if you don't know. I understand if you don't, but yes, no, or I don't know. We'll give it about 15 more seconds here. Five more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it and share the results. Okay, so you should see the results on your screen now. So to the question, is your team's culture aligned with your strategy? 52% of you said yes, 19% said no, 30% said I don't know. And then once I get past this next one, I'll kick it back to Juan to do a little analysis on these two polls. Okay, so the next question here that you should start to see here in just a moment if you don't already see it Is your organization's culture aligned with your strategy? Again, yes, no, or I don't know. And we'll give it about 15 seconds. I'll give it 10 more seconds here just because we still have quite a few votes coming in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So you should see the results here on your screen. So 45% of you said yes, 28% said no, and another 28% said I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and hide those results. Juan, anything that stands out to you in those results for those two polls?
Yeah, it's consistent with all the research that we do around this, which is half of you think that your team and your company have a culture aligned to the strategy. And culture is something like a journey that at any one point it can be aligned, but also needs to change, and then it's not aligned. So for instance, remote work is a new culture. How many of the companies on this call were ready for remote work culture in March? By now, it seems like half of you would say, yeah, we're more aligned to having to adapt to this new culture reality for this year, 2020, for instance. That's a pretty in-your-face, obvious change of culture that if we were to guess, half of the companies out there probably have adjusted and half have not. The other thinking is, even if we don't look at COVID and that kind of impact on culture, take a company that's innovative and change-oriented, and let's say their products aren't hitting or landing the market as creative, innovative products, maybe there's a misalignment between who the people are at that company and what they're delivering in terms of products. Or at a restaurant chain, whether it's a casual dining like Miller's Ale House or a Cheesecake Factory like retail restaurant operation, if Net Promoter Score on customer service is low, maybe you don't have service-oriented people. You can only train so much about how to be good at service. There's also people who are just naturally good at service, regardless of the training. And so it sounds like, half of the audience today are at companies where they feel that culture is aligned to the strategy of the company, whatever that KPI or metric is. So, but the opportunity is huge, because for the 50% of you who either don't know or said no, that's the opportunity. If everyone in the company doesn't agree or think that it's aligned, you're probably not shooting bullseye in what you're trying to achieve in terms of performance. This is what Humantelligence focuses on, and what keeps almost every CEO up at night is, do I have the right people in the right jobs and the right culture and the way of doing things to deliver a product or a service or an output in my organization or team that's aligned to what we're trying to achieve. Next.
Perfect. Yeah, and so just a quick side note here. As I promised earlier, I did put links to all of those things that you can try out in the chat. And then I had a couple of questions asking if the slides will be available. I believe I mentioned it, but maybe not. The slides will be made available after the webinar. I will send those out to you via email. Kicking it back to you, Juan.
Great. And so why don't we align now on what culture is? We've talked about how important it is and how many people don't really know if it is aligned. You need to know if it's aligned. It's not a gut feeling. It's got to be measured, right? Because as Jack Welch at GE and every great business school management professor has always talked about, if you can't measure something, you can't optimize it. Okay, and so culture is one of those things. Let's all get on the same page. For those of you who've been on this before, you've seen this. We call it our BMW framework, and all we're doing is codifying in 28 things across behaviors, motivators, and work styles what Deloitte, PwC's Katzenbach Center, or Deloitte's Persons group, they all agree. All the research shows that culture is three things. It's the way things get done, what we call W of BMW, the work styles of a person and a team or a group. It's the behaviors over time that are supported by these shared experiences, what we call B, behaviors. And then the values or motivators, what many of you have on your company t-shirts, coffee mugs, and on the wall, are corporate values, right? Which can be similar throughout the world, but usually at a company, the behaviors and the work styles are really different. If you're looking at Coca-Cola's finance team versus their marketing team, or if you look at Coca-Cola France versus Coca-Cola Germany, two countries right next to each other, the culture of Coca-Cola in those geographic regions are quite different, because that's looking at what's underlined here, the collective piece of whole. Interesting to note, culture is not something that should be only driven and maintained from the top. What all the research shows is culture is something that is just within. It's how an organization lives and breathes, and that doesn't rely on top-down management. That's something that is just in the DNA of the people, and so you don't need kind of command and control. Next. All the research shows that if you align culture to strategy, you actually will grow your company at 30% more, as well as increase profit at 7 to 17% more. So what we're talking about is not some soft, kumbaya, let's all be happy, and if employee satisfaction should lead to customer satisfaction and more profit. A lot of research has shown that just because your employees are happy doesn't mean that you have the right employees in the right jobs to achieve the market results you want. So there have been plenty of companies where employee satisfaction engagement surveys are through the roof, yet the companies go out of business. So we need to get out of our thinking that an engagement survey is your culture, or that an engagement survey is going to align culture to strategy. Engagement surveys are your emergency room. It's basically seeing where there's a problem in sentiment. It's not going to get you an understanding if you have the right people in the right jobs aligned and engaged every day. This is a study by Jazulski, Lur, and Holman back in 2011 that's been replicated ever since. Next. So what's the first step? You need to evaluate the current performance of your organization. So if you're going to align culture to strategy, you want to know the strategy is going to impact what KPIs of your business. So some common themes, we threw some examples here, and this is, are you looking for growth, right? Or is this, a turnaround situation? Are you looking to drive profit and revenue, or is it to extract more profitability in your current revenue, knowing that it's a slow growth environment? Customer satisfaction in the retail and restaurant environments, customer satisfaction and net promoter scores really drive strategy. So what is the culture you might need for that? Manufacturing, often, great manufacturing processes and organizations have low defects. And so what are the KPIs there? Healthcare, obviously you want operational KPIs in patient care, how long it takes to get seen if you're in the emergency room, how many days you're in the hospital after a procedure, how fast the recovery, all these healthcare type strategic KPIs, retail shrinkage if you're running a store operation, or out of stocks in terms of optimizing revenue if a product's not there, and optimizing your inventory for the retail operations. All of those things are important to evaluate what your performance objectives are, and therefore the strategy and what culture you need. So for example, some questions are, if your organization's high growth, do you have people who can move quickly culturally to align with that strategy and adapt and be agile for high intense needs, right? If you're operating with a remote or hybrid remote workforce, do you have people who naturally enjoy working remote, right? We've all experienced now in 9 months the reality that some of the best workers for the last 5 years at companies have gone home and started to slack and be off a little because they don't like working remote, and it doesn't align with their psychology and work styles. Other people who might have been kind of not great working at the corporate office are now some of the best workers, and you have everything in the middle. This is all important in terms of aligning a culture. Now, if the strategy is working remote for some of your companies, you should be looking to not only identify who could be at risk, but also hire for remote workers, to hire that culture to support that new remote work strategy and environment. Next. Step 2, you've got to make some assumptions about where those gaps are. So I've given some examples that I think are starting to crystallize for some of you how you think about this with your leadership. We've talked about the first 2 bullet points. Let's talk about the third one, diversity. Let's say your company doesn't have innovative products or services or innovative solutions, or let's say your company seems to not have a diverse, what has been known as diversity, color of skin, racial diversity. Well, guess what? Just putting in affirmative action programs won't solve your diversity problem, and promoting minorities in positions of power, that just won't solve it, because you still have a problem at the core, which is it's not a diverse thinking company. And if you have a culture that is diverse in its thinking, you'll end up hiring more diverse thinking people. You won't have everyone looking just like the manager. And so therefore, over time, it will lead to a process and decisions that will lead to a diversity of ethnicity and racial diversity. So a little longer to achieve, but it's really solving the problem at the cultural level, not at the quota level. And in terms of solving problems and more innovation, the more diversity of thought you have on a team, a group, a division, the more innovation and problem solving you'll have. Harder to manage, but with tools today that blend psychometrics and insights from that at every employee's fingertips, including leaders, this will make every leader a better leader in any of these cultural contexts for whatever strategy you might have. Let's say your organization needs to leverage IT and technology to enable new business opportunities, but your company has a lot of systematic and routine type folks. So the best example here is before CRM software with Siebel systems and Salesforce, let's say before, and mobile technology enabled almost every company out there. In early 2000s, a lot of sales organizations were still the male mid-age golfer who would take clients on golf trips and pat on the back, wheel of dealing type profile. But then data and technology came into the organization. Let's say, whether it's a GE sales force or a Merck Pharmaceutical or any sales organization, let's say they were moving to leveraging technology and data through Salesforce. That's a very different culture. Someone and people who are into innovation and new solutions and change and learning new tricks, even if they're 40, 50, like myself, or older, that's not easy for people. And so finding people in those categories that are open to innovation helps you adapt that culture to those new business challenges and technology challenges in that example. So to summarize, the next step is to purely get to think about your strategy, what you're trying to impact in terms of objectives and results, and what ideal culture you would want for that strategy, whether it's at the company level, divisional level, or team level. These assumptions, although they're not facts, will drive what future steps you will need to create, manage, and hire for the culture to support it. Next. So now comes measuring. You've got your assumptions, you know where your company or your division or your team's headed. Where is your current team, division, or company aligned to that and what you need? This is where you can use tools like Humantelligence and others out there to actually measure the behaviors, the motivators, the work energizers in a quick, scalable 12-minute test, right, that you can give to 10,000 people by just sending a link and getting these culture mappings at every level of your organization, team, division, group, all the way to the top in literally one day. And so getting insights for the individual, like the one that you see on the page there for myself, for a group, a team, as well as a division. Next. Once you get those insights that are automatically provided to you through the platform, and which is updated real time as employees exit or join teams, or you're putting together teams and are hypothetically looking at team culture as you build teams out before you actually move people and do career mobility. You can also do opinion surveys, okay? But opinion surveys, the block on the right, these engagement surveys, they're not really going to get to your underlying culture of whether you have the right person, people, teams in place to achieve that strategy and the culture that you need. Engagement surveys will give you, or where there's pockets of bad behavior by management and where people are unhappy and where there's a problem that you have to fix. But companies don't get ahead by just spending 24/7 fixing problems, it's best at the Band-Aid level, it's best to change the culture where then you don't have those problems to go fix once and for all. Next.
Juan, I actually have a question that's relevant to this one,
Sure.
to the first blue box here. So on the blue box that says use a platform that updates in real time as new employees enter and exit the business. Can you walk through, why it's important to measure the culture of your organization over time rather than just like a one and done approach?
Great question. If you're in a retail operation, or let's say a restaurant, right? We had this client up in Minnesota that had a restaurant chain, and they had about 40% turnover. And so every month, 40% of their organization at this large 60-person restaurant was moving on and turning over, and they were hiring new people. That's really untenable to know what is the living culture every day when you have so many new people. With a platform like this, you can measure it, know the snapshot, let's say Jan 1, lose people, but learn from the insights on who worked out and was a high-performing server with, that got great remarks on the Net Promoter Scores, and the customers raved and came back, and maybe even could upsell customers to buy more things. So the average basket of goods for a family of 4 was increasing from $80 to $100, et cetera. So revenue, profit started to move forward. To looking at the average performers and what the profile of the culture of those people are, but you can pull out the different subgroups, as well as the low performers who either were fired or quit. Once the system learns that, it'll then recommend what the profile is for high performance in the environment that this restaurant wanted, which was a profitable, revenue growing, high net promoter score, good customer service. And so, for instance, in measuring it over time, they started to get a better feel of what the right culture was, because some companies don't know what the right profile is, the right 28 characteristics. A platform like this will tell you and show you through the performance of your own people. Don't let outside consulting firms tell you the best culture for your company. Let the performance of people in your company tell you that. You can take the high performer from Bennigan's and put them in TGI Fridays, and that might not work out so well for that person or that company, because what the culture is at Bennigan's and the culture at TGI Fridays, very different even for the same job. And so by measuring it over time, they learned and got to a better culture profile per server, per cook, per all the 5 positions they hire for. And sure enough, they increased revenue by 20%, where it was decaying. They got customers coming back monthly instead of biannually, but on a monthly, so 10 times more per year. Average check sizes got bigger, and their net promoter scores went from 2 to 4 stars on Yelp. True story, Minnesota, amazing restaurant and experience. So that's kind of why you'd want to measure it real time as people coming in and out of the organization. Retail and restaurant, there's a lot more change more quickly, but even at a Coca-Cola, a large team will be influenced by a new member, and that team, even if the culture is set and people measured it and it's understood, it's good to understand where that new team member fits with that team, where it doesn't fit with the team, and whether it adds diversity of thought and complements the culture or not, and where there are friction points or where there is alignment, even moving, for somebody joining that's new. Okay, moving to step 4, breaking down your culture. This is a picture on the right of one of the 3 lenses where we call BMW framework. This picture on the right is the culture of a team. So this leader, this is our company, we had everybody take it, obviously, when we built this tool, and within 2 hours, I now knew the exact culture of my team for behaviors, for motivators, and for work styles. And I could understand where people's dominant vibration laid in being either on the left side, stability oriented, if you see the bold words at the top there, or if someone sat more on the change oriented side. And then if you see the light orange, bold, horizontal bars, the first one on the top right, decisive, with 7, and reflective on the second bar on the left side, I know that the 2 of 8 vibrational directions and energy of my team is being really decisive, yet also reflective, which is great because you don't want people running off quickly with quick decision making without the counterbalance of people thinking before they move. And so although it creates friction for some fast moving individuals, there's a counterbalance in the team that's going to have everybody thinking critically and being more reflective. There's another large one there at the bottom right, freeform, where it's our third most dominant one, where we have a lot of creative freeform thinkers in a startup environment. Well, this is from 5 years ago, this data. When we launched the company, we wanted kind of innovative thinkers for a more creative and change-oriented culture to develop amazing products. Next. This breakdown of culture by individual, by team, by any two people across a whole group, all the way up to the community level of company, this is what we call emotional intelligence through an organization, or understanding culture at every level. It does give individual self-awareness on these 28 characteristics called BMW framework: behaviors, motivators, work styles. It does allow two people to engage better. You hear often the mantra of every company: we want employees to connect, collaborate, and communicate better. Well, guess what? You can't do that if you don't have a step before that called understanding each other. And now in a remote work environment, it's even more important to be able to understand people that you've never met. And maybe for the next 5 years, you might never meet, because now people might start just always working remote. And as new employees come on board, they're not having coffee with you or lunch at the cafeteria, and meetings are not in person. So why not get insights when it's even more needed in this remote work context? All the way to the team, to the group, to the community level for the whole company. Next. Fifth step of 6. Learn those differences in the cultural traits of your top performers versus low performers. Today, what happens in companies? People perform, they get bonus. People are average, they stay there, they don't get bonus, but they're happy enough. And people who don't perform get fired, or are miserable if they're not fired, or don't quit. Okay, that happens so many places. We all have stories of it. I've been in those situations. We all have. Imagine getting rid of that story. Imagine where you can identify why people perform, why they don't perform in any one team, in any one role, in any division. So that, for example, in sales, you can say, wow, this is the culture of high-performing salespeople. And now you go to your low performers, and instead of firing them, because that's a big investment and a loss of all that training, you actually show them, hey, here's your personality, here's how you think, how you behave, what drives you. We've now got data that shows that people who actually perform in this role are this way in their behaviors. And let's say they're really decisive, you're really deliberate. It takes you a long time to follow up meetings and be on top of customers and follow up with this and that after the invoice is done. And you're not very proactive. And we're realizing that those who are successful in this job and fast paced need to be that way. Instead of firing someone, you can have a very professional, career-oriented conversation and say, we have two options. And before this kind of tool came up, we would have fired you. You're at that level. You're not performing. But now we can help train and develop you to change your behaviors, to be more like the high performers, to work in styles that are leading to more performance enhancing results. So you can do that. You can train and develop people with this insight to make them perform better or not. 2, you can then start to replace those people who do get fired for lack of performance and hire better for more people like your high performers. Now, if high performance in a research and development role, innovation role, or let's say professional services consulting, you don't want everyone to be the same, and high performance is actually everyone being different, you can use a tool like this to guarantee diversity of thought and to guarantee that the manager does not just hire who everybody likes in the final 5 candidates. Because if everybody just simply at the end of a process of interviews of 300 applicants, or 1,000 down to 20 interviews, phone screens to 5 finalists, 3 second-round finalists, and you just go with who everyone likes every time, that leads to subjectivity and bias where you're only hiring similar people. This is the platform that can allow you to guarantee a diverse candidate to complement the culture of your group, team, or division. Next. There is a sidebar here, though. Don't forget about this diversity of thought. It's not just a nice thing to say, but high-performing organizations are more likely to value diversity of thought at an 88% versus 41% for lower performing organizations. Yes, it is harder to manage when you hire people different than yourself. And imagine you have John, Mary, and Steve as the finalists. Everyone loves John. We love him. He thinks just like me. He's great, right? And you want to become friends with them. How hard is it to hire Steve over John and Mary if everybody likes John and Mary more? They can all do the job on paper. By your 3 finalists, they should all have the same experience and abilities skill-wise. But you know how hard it is to hire the person who's different, that is liked least? That's because that person's probably going to bring a different perspective. Tools like this start to allow companies to do that, so not everyone has the same think. Higher performing organizations are 3 times more likely to assess individual and team cognitive preferences and working styles. So those companies that actually are performing better are already using tools like this to guarantee that diversity of thought, to prevent the old cycle of just hiring who we like over and over and over. Next. Culture fit versus culture add versus everything else. So there's a couple definitions. You might want to take a picture of this slide. I know Charles is sending it out, but you know, culture fit, many people think fit means cloning or just like me. More people like what we like. That's not culture fit. The best culture fit is what aligns with your strategy. If the best culture fit is changing the culture of the current company, to let's say from being cautious and very routine oriented and do things the way they've always done it, to we got to shake this company up and be more innovative. Culture fit is actually something very different than what you have, because culture fit is what do we need as a culture to change, you know, the products and innovate and be more innovative. What is that strategy? If that's a complete change, you need a new culture. So culture fit is not more of the same. Okay, that's how we measure it and how we talk about it. Culture add is where you're saying we want to complement what we have and guarantee the opposite. Culture contribution implies that either cloning or diversity of thought can be positive. In certain situations, you do want to clone. Call center agents, you have 300 of them. They're all doing the same script. They're all, you know, being timed to do it quickly. You might not want 500 people doing completely different processes and different questions and doing their own thing. You might want to just find what works and keep it there. Takeaways, no matter what you do call it, depending on the steps outlined earlier, measurement, strategy, targeting a culture that aligns to your strategy, you need to step in and align to those targets. So whether they're similar or different to your current staff, it depends on where you want to go as a company and what your strategy is. Next. I think this is the last step, step 6, where you set your target culture. So tools like ours will allow a team leader, a divisional head of sales, or the entire company CEO to quickly codify. If you see the screenshot at target team culture, you click there and it leads you to like sliding bars, kind of like on a website when you say how many employees, you slide a little ball on a bar. It'll actually ask you, do you want a culture that's more decisive or deliberate? Do you want a culture that's more change oriented or, you know, and innovative or more cautious, right? You can literally push a button and say, for future employees, I want to optimize diversity of thought. Boom, pushes the button and it'll filter applicants by who adds and contributes to the most opposite culture to your existing team. So once you set that target team culture for the team, for the division, for the company, you can then, it's now automated and every decision around people can be verified and compared to that, and not the typical, you know, past 40 years subjectivity of people like and going with gut feel. Next. The last step actually is 7, become intentional. Through this entire process, you can make culture and manage culture and hire for culture to have a culture by intention, not a culture by default. So the act of understanding, defining, an alignment between a target culture and strategy for a more intentional business outcome as a result. So if you have a culture of intention for a specific strategy, you will perform better, back to the statistics at the front, and be more profitable, drive more revenue, and be higher performing versus your competitors. For example, at Humantelligence, 5 years ago, I hired a culture in the before page, our work energizers. If you can see, left is systematic, right is creative. I was a startup. Our company was a startup. We needed really creative people who, I'll read the titles, believed in new solutions. That top row, one of our dominant traits, working with people. Variety is that third bar, which is our third most intense one, and flexibility, right? This is a true culture of the BMW, the work energizers of a startup. 2 years ago, 3.5 to 4 years in, that was the wrong culture. Once we had all the great innovative products and we're leading the market on culture and on measuring culture and these types of things, we needed to scale. And so we needed a different culture for the next phase of our team, and in this case, the same for our company, which was the same. So if you look at the right picture, systematic environment, you can see that now, whereas before 80 to 90% was on the right side, creative, now it's more balanced, 50-50, left and right, where we have 2 more individuals who believe in proven methods. We have now 7 or 8 who believe in working with facts. We even have someone who likes more predictability, right, to keep the rails on. And structure, we have 5 people who want to put structure in, and that structure was key for us scaling. So we saw a huge inflection in growth of Humantelligence 2 years ago when we were ready. We went from being a creative, innovative, change-oriented startup with great, cool products to more Six Sigma predictive, scaled, structured organization to onboard 10, 20 customers a month instead of the 1 or 2 that we were hand-holding prior. And so that was fundamental key to our success as a company, and every one of you on this call have that same challenge. Although maybe you weren't a startup, every one of you in every year should look at the culture, how aligns the strategy, where you are in the journey for your team, your division, your company, and what that means for a changing culture. And we use this tool to literally hire and train and develop people to change that culture on the behaviors, motivators, and work styles. Next.
Yeah, and Juan, I'll jump in real quick and let you catch your breath. So basically what we've done so far is we've kind of laid out, hey, you need to measure, right? And then once you've measured at all these different levels, go ahead and define what it is exactly what you need. So now you've measured and you've defined what it is that you need. Now, the next step is how to use that information. You can use it in the hiring process, ongoing. You can use it in managing and developing your talent on an ongoing basis. So these next few slides here, and Juan, we've got about 18 minutes left. We'll probably cut into the Q&A here. These next few slides, we'll walk through kind of how to get the most out of that information. There's some slides that we'll show you, some that we won't. But they'll be in the slide deck when we send out this presentation. So Juan, I'll kick it back to you.
Great. So I'll go quickly because I think people love the questions part of these webinars and not hearing me talk so much. So step 8, hiring, right? So select the right people for that new target culture for your team or organization, and use performance and diversity of thought benchmarks to intentionally hire for fit to strategy. The picture on the right, basically, it will rank candidates by, if you look at the third column, it says manager. So who fits best with the manager? And that could be someone who is completely different, if that's what the manager wants, or someone who is exactly like the manager. Now you can use data to go either direction. The fourth column to the right, where it starts in the orange bubble, then green, green, that is the team culture. Who is like the team, who's different. The next column is the ideal profile. If you know that you want to change the culture, be more creative, more like my company, more structured and scale and predictive, you can use that and see what candidates fit to that. Or you can use it for comparing high performers. You don't need the other 3 columns. If you're hiring just great call center agents that are exactly like what you already know was great, or a salesperson or manufacturing shop floor person, then just use that and find people like the ones who are already performing. Next. Again, these are the different steps. We can skip this slide. Everybody knows how to recruit, but basically we'll go through these, I think, as I show you the examples next. So you set what the culture is it the fit with the team you're looking at, and the platform will automatically pop the team of the hiring manager, or maybe that person runs a whole division or what we call group in our platform. Then you set it similar or different with the manager culture fit, and ideal or high performers. This is setting it up in what I already explained on the output when candidates apply. Next. Then you assess the candidates. As simple as it is to give a 12-minute link, a link that is a 12-minute questionnaire to your employees that you can get thousands of people, or a small company of 15 startup company in a day. You can do the same with applicants and just give it to them in their process where they're on a shop floor. You can put tablets on the manufacturing floor if they don't have mobiles, like our client Ashley Furniture did with thousands of manufacturing workers. Or you can do it on your website when they apply as part of the regular process. The platform like this, and all platforms that you consider like this, should be integrated with your applicant tracking systems, Workable, Taleo, iSIM, SuccessFactors, Workday. I mean, we have integration with all those, so it'll be a button that is just connected to the workflows of your talent recruiting, talent acquisition group. So you assess them, then the results come in that table that I showed you. Next. This is that table. You can build a short list based on it quickly. You can go through thousands of candidates without ever doing a phone screen and get straight to your final candidates you want to interview. Most of our clients experience an 80% reduction in time to hire because they get to skip a lot of the subjective phone screens and they can go straight to the right fit for the role. Now, this does not do sourcing and it does not do skills fit. So if you have a role that needs specific skills, you would still have to get to that part of the process, to those 20 people with great resumes, for instance, and then you give it to them. But that also prevents you or saves you doing 20 phone screens, and you go straight to the best 4. Next. You can look at candidates you're hiring for a remote worker profile. So a platform like this also allows you to hire for better remote workers. So again, it'll show you where to, if you're onboarding somebody, where to focus on helping them onboard best, etc., with tips and recommendations. Next. It'll also show you at the team level how this person adds and contributes to a team culture. Everybody on the team will see that person's profile and how they fit and are similar or different on a scale of 0 to 100. And so everybody can then work better and understand each other, which leads to better connection, collaboration, communication day 1, not by month 6. So you end up getting higher collaboration performance between any 2 employees and better resonance for not only the employees, but for the entire team. Day 1, not month 6. Next. We have this plugin for Chrome, Outlook, Microsoft, basically called EQ Everywhere, where this kind of gamified insights on, how similar you are, 0 to 50, in this case, Charles and Kurt, on calendar. If you see that calendar in the bottom left, you can see that if you click on a calendar before a meeting, you can go in and get info on a person. How do I communicate with this person? How do I influence them? What is their learning style if I'm learning and development before I train them tomorrow or later today or do coaching session? I can pull up the side-by-side with that person. You can also get this information through email, right? As you're writing an email before you write to somebody you don't know. Next.
Yeah, and I'm going to skip this next slide on benefits because you already went through those.
Yeah, and here we have a case study with a company called ATP Co. They basically, and we won't go through the slides in detail, but they use a platform like this from everything from team building on how to assign diversity of thought, coach matching, like who's going to be a good mentor and be the counter to my profile. It would be great to have a mentor who can see things from the other side. Oh, you just went back. Better collaboration across the organization, right? Better resonance, creating more belonging is how they use it. So everybody's more inclusive on thinking on how other people see the world. This is a great tool for that. And that's not on some workshop, that's on a day-to-day level where you're using it in every email to someone new in your organization you've never written to. So you don't need the high touch labor expensive consultants. This is culture as a service, or CAS, right? This is where everybody can leverage tools and insights like this across your current systems. And then again, using kind of scorecards to understand how to improve during a remote work environment. These are all things they did, and Charles will send you this case study on how they leveraged it in detail. Next.
Yeah, yep. There's actually a video on YouTube, on our YouTube page, that outlines these slides here, and AT Pico actually went through them in a presentation. So you will get those in the follow-up email. But at this time, I would
actually,
like
Charles,
to
go back to the team called the meeting culture slide. I think one more, yeah, this one. So like I told you about collaboration between two people on a meeting. On the right side, if you go to your calendars now, you can click on a meeting, which we all do before we jump into the office physical space or onto Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and click on the meeting, and it'll give you the meeting culture. What's the culture of the people I'm about to present to or with or meet with, and what are their behaviors, motivators, and who should I know is going to push back, and who is of service, and who is a leader who could drive part of the meeting if I call them and assign it to them. So this is one of the most powerful parts of our platform that leads to an infusion of emotional intelligence and makes every meeting even more effective, especially in this new remote world. Okay, Charles, let's go to questions.
Yeah, and I think that's important. This entire section is important for the fact that, it's great that you're able to now at this point align your culture and strategy, but it's what are you going to do to keep it going on the long-term basis? So that's why we were talking a little bit about the living, breathing nature of a culture platform. But anyways, that somebody had a question on. So with that said, we'll go ahead and open up for questions. One, I have 2 questions right off the bat from the audience that have been waiting for a while. But if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the questions queue, and we will answer them now. If we end up running out of time, Juan and I will stay on and answer them, and you will get those questions answered in the recording. So Juan, first question here for you is curious as to how the tool was developed. Can you give background on research and how it was developed to get this type of analysis?
Great question. Sorry I didn't bring that up early. All of you, no matter what psychometric tool you use, or platform in our case, which is a tool instrument within a platform, you need to ask them that question. It's very important. You need to make sure that the instrument, the scientific instrument, has been technically validated with proper Cronbach scores by question, that there's no adverse impact. So there's a study called an adverse impact study, and it has to be compliant with EEOC. So ours is all of those. This is a 30-year instrument developed by a scientist that we bought the proprietary nature of that 5 years ago. And so, we, every time a question is changed, we've validated that. And so it is seen as accurate. Actually, I think it's 88 to 90% accurate on most of the questions. So if someone were to use this for hiring and the candidate said, oh, you used it, it's not fair, it's not accurate, you would not lose a lawsuit, at least based on our tool. But you need to ask that same question for all the other ones. There's a lot of tools out there that are not scientifically validated. The actual science on the 3 lenses, BMW, the B is basically the DISC, D-I-S-C methodology. Okay, the motivators or values, that was out of a researcher. That methodology is a Harvard-based researcher, and their methodology on measuring values and motivations. And then the third one is really our own methodology that was developed over 30 years, our scientists who looked at the behaviors, and instead of, it's a way of basically asking people what work environments energize them. And so that's our proprietary methodology. Next question.
Cool. I think you mostly answered the next question, but this person just asked specifically how this can be legally used in the hiring and interview process. Is there anything else that you want to touch on there?
Yeah, no, our tool can be used for hiring, and about half of our customers actually that's what they use it for, recruiting. Another half use it for culture management, and there's some that use it for both. But yeah, our tool has been validated. Candidates love it. No, none of we have over I think 450,000 users across all of our customers, and there's never been one lawsuit, and we've been at it for 5 years. Most of our big clients, Merck, Bank of the West, Ashley Furniture, Coca-Cola is not a client yet because of the situation they're in with COVID and the layoffs and the furloughs. But to get to the point where they're evaluating it to be a client, all these big customers have legal teams and scientists that evaluated our platform to make sure it was at that level, to protect from any downside legal risks.
Perfect. All right, so next question here for you. Can you help to explain more the differences between real-time update platform and opinion survey?
Yeah, so opinion surveys or engagement surveys really are just asking people kind of top of mind, what do you think? What do you feel about the culture? Or if you had to describe the culture, pick from this list. Do you think the culture is innovative and change-oriented or predictable and routine? Right? So there's a lot of bias in these engagement surveys about culture or about temperament, if they're happy or not. Would you recommend this company to a friend? Would you, bring a family member into the company? Scientific instruments like ours, and you need to verify this with whichever ones you're using for psychometrics, they don't use those terms. They don't ask someone to pick from a list in the sense of, for example, ours determines if someone or a team is decisive or deliberate. We never use the words decisive or deliberate in any of the questions. We come to a conclusion around the organization that it's a creative organization. Never use the word creative in our questions. So people can't game the questionnaire. They don't know what we're asking. They have no idea how to predict and say, well, I think they want to hear this answer. And so it's really 36 questions that you force rank for answers that best align to what you would answer. And so, I encourage all of you to take the test. Once you do, you'll see that it's impossible to game. There's never a right or wrong answer. And only someone looking at the data across everyone, let's say 100 people, would know who the right fit is for the potential strategy or outcome. So you don't have to worry about someone trying to be inauthentic and try to gaming the questionnaire. Next.
Yeah, so I think to add some additional color there, I think, it's the difference between getting people's opinions on a regular basis or, once. I think, if you're going to do that, you need to do it multiple times. Like Juan mentioned, in emergency situations, it can be helpful versus, seeing how the actual underlying culture of your organization is updating and changing in real time over time and aligning with your strategy. So we showed a slide earlier that kind of showed a gap analysis between your current state and your future state. And so as you're adding new employees into your organization or people are leaving your organization, seeing how that gap analysis is changing and aligning with your strategy that you've laid out, I think is the big difference. Okay, so Juan, I got one more question here for you. Can we just use the EQ Everywhere tool for my organization?
Great question. Yes, you can. The only caveat is you still need to ingest the data. You still need to give it to your employees. So instead of buying our entire platform, you literally could just buy the assessment where you send a link to, let's say, 300 employees or 3,000 employees or 30,000 employees and say, hey, this is going to be great for collaboration when you're writing emails and going to team meetings. You send the link out, all 300 people or 30,000 people take the assessment that one day in 12 minutes and download a plugin. And if you're a large company, your IT team can just automatically download the plugin for your whole company. And next thing you know, on all your emails, Outlook, Gmail, and calendar invites, you can just click on people's emails and it'll give you all these insights. So real simple. It's not a software platform, not like Oracle or Workday or SuccessFactors. It literally is as simple as everyone downloading LinkedIn on their phone. I mean, it's that simple. You get everybody up and running and getting these insights. So that's EQ everywhere. And yes, you can buy just that and use that and get up and running for as many employees as you want to use it.
Yeah, and if you fall into the bucket of, hey, maybe I just want to try this out for my organization with the EQ tool, reach out to me directly. My email is charles.summers@humantelligence.com. I'll put you in touch with somebody that can help you with that. But anyways, that brings us to
Charles.
Yep,
Charles, I was thinking the question before that. I do have one more analogy about opinion surveys versus really underlying culture. Here's the best example for any of you who's a parent and you've had kids. Let's say kids who've been 6 years old. Let's say you have a kid, Johnny, and a daughter, Marianne, at 6 and 8 years old, and you wake them up on a Wednesday to go to school. Those kids, Johnny and Marianne, have a certain personality and psychometric profile, right? They could be in terms of their behaviors, their motivators, and their work styles. And it doesn't change every day. Their behaviors, motivators, work styles, by the age of 6 and 8, you know if they're really creative or really structured. And you're probably thinking they might be an engineer or they might be an artist. You already know who they are, right? So that we understand is the same for any employee at a company. Their basic behaviors, motivators, and work styles are a certain way, and as a group, and a culture of an organization, right? Now, at 6 a.m. when you wake up, Marianne and Johnny, and you're driving them to school, back in the day when we went to school, and you looked in that mirror and said, hey, are you guys excited about going to school? Aren't I a great mom or dad? And isn't this a great family to be part of? They might be really like, their temperament at that moment, if you did an engagement survey or opinion survey, could be like, well, no, mom, no, dad, I don't like you. I don't want to go to school. I hate you. This isn't fun, right? And it'd be a really low engagement score. And that child, or that, in this case, of you guys, your employees, could have down moments and negative energy. But then on Saturday, you wake up, Marianne and Johnny, and you're going to drive them at 6 in the morning to Disney World. You do the same engagement survey with the same 2 kids on the way to Disney World, and even earlier, let's say 5 a.m. Hey, we're going to Disney World. What do you think about this family? Great family to be a part of. Would you recommend this to a friend? Is this a wonderful, am I a great mom or dad? They're going to say, yes, you're the best. We love it. Okay. Days like today, post-election, we don't even know who won, but let's assume that, most people wanted somebody to win and they lose. If there was an engagement survey for the next month, there might be a negative vibration. None of those engagement survey outcomes, whether people are happy or mad or upset or not engaged, none of that will actually tell you that there's a change in your child from Wednesday to Saturday in their behaviors, motivators, and values. Because the reality is the results of an engagement survey can be all over the map between one day and the next. But in terms of the cultural values of your child or even your employees, what behaviors, motivators, and values they have, that doesn't really change every week, every month, every 6 months. That is a lot harder to change. So doing pulse surveys every couple of days or weeks is a lot of work, which actually is not telling you about the culture of your people. I'll leave it with that. Charles, why don't you close it up now that we've come to the hour? Charles, you're on mute, or I don't hear you.
I was on mute. Thanks for that. All right, so I want to first off say thank you to Juan for presenting. I'm glad we were able to get through some of our technical difficulties that we had initially and get through the webinar and even have some time for some questions today. I also want to thank our audience for sticking around today. We had a great turnout, so I really appreciate that. When you have a chance, feel free to go and check out Humantelligence. You can try out the assessment, you can try out the EQ Everywhere tool, or come to us and get a tour of the Humantelligence platform. Anyways, I once again thank you to everybody. We will see you on the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.